Welcome to our second session in the discussion in employee relations. Last week, we looked at the nature and the role of employee relations, and we covered the definition of employee relations. We also looked at the terms that are related to employee relations, and we also looked at the tapering theory of employee relation. Lastly, we answered the question, unions, are they good or bad? And we also looked at some mechanisms that an organization can adopt to be able to achieve a union-free organization. In this session today, we want to look at the framework of industrial and employee relations in our country, Kenya. And within these topics, we want to discuss 4 issues. First, we look at the parties that are involved in industrial relations in Kenya. And then we look at the aims and the objectives of industrial relations and employee relations. Number 3, we look at the tripartite approach to industrial relations in Kenya. And then lastly, we look at the industrial relations charter. The first item, which is the parties that are involved in the industrial relations in Kenya, we find that basically looking at the framework of industrial relations, industrial relation encompasses both formal and informal interactions between employees and their employers, and between the trade unions and the employers' associations in general. So therefore, it's a wide net that covers employees and their representatives, and also cover employers and their representatives. Now, looking at these items one by one, we say that industrial relation, therefore, is an outcome of a relationship of employment. By this, we mean then that if there is no employment, then probably we would not have industrial relation. It would not exist. In this, then it means that industrial relation is only important to the extent that they are employee or employment relationship. The second, we want to say that industrial relation include both individuals' relations as well as collective relations. By this, what we mean is that within industrial relation, there are relations that are actually fronted from a person to person, like an employee to an employer or an employee to a union. And it also encompasses actions or activities that are collective in nature. For example, the collective bargaining agreements that are orchestrated for the welfare or for the benefits of all the parties within the industries. Number 3, we also want to say that there are several parties that are involved in industrial relations system. By calling it industrial relations system, we are looking at something that is a system theory based, which says that within this particular system, there are many parties within it. And in this system, it encompasses the employees, the employers, the employer association and the employers association, the government and the unions are all in this engagement. Fourth, we want also to say that the concept of industrial relation is a complex and is also multidimensional. Why do we say that it is complex? It involves so many parties and so many stakeholders, and there are a lot of engagements that are also within it. The main purpose then of industrial relation is to maintain harmonious relationship between management and employees within the organization. This brings us to the second part of looking at the aims and the objectives of industrial relations. The question then is, why do we have industrial relation? The objectives of industrial relations come to safeguard 3 key interests in an employment relationship. First is to develop and maintain a harmonious working relationship between management, which is the employer, and the employees. 2, industrial relations also come to safeguard the interest of employees and the employers and to secure better interest for all of them and ensure the goodwill for both parties. Thirdly, we say that industrial relations is also aimed at establishing and maintaining democracy in this particular relationship. By this we mean a space whereby employees and employers have a say in the relationship and what affects them. Additionally, industrial relations also aims to avoid industrial conflict and ensure industrial peace in the relationship between employers and employees and enhance better working conditions and living standards. And finally, it also supports in raising the productivity in labor between the employee and employers, and therefore avoid negative impacts of turnover and absenteeism. We note, therefore, in all this that all the parties to the industrial relations have specific roles, responsibilities, duties, and rights. For example, the employers must ensure that they assign the employees work and also has a duty to provide good working conditions to the employees. And in return, they must also ensure that they pay the employees for the work that the employees have done. On the side of the employee, they must also obey the lawful instructions that are issued by the employers. They must perform work that is given, and in return, they must also receive pay for the work that they have done. Additionally, the government also must ensure that they establish and create a conducive working environment through legislations, through ensuring that disputes are resolved as fast as possible, and in return, they also have a right to enforce the legislation and also to levy penalties for non-compliance. The next item we want to look at is the tripartite approach to industrial relations in Kenya. It is important for us to understand that the employment relationship has undergone a series of transformation since the conception of the industrial age, where the relationship of employment came into the fore. Kenya is not an exception to this, and many challenges that have affected industrial relations or employment relations in general are also been observed in Kenya since the colonial era. The Industrial Relations Charter, therefore, was established in the year 1962 with an aim of ensuring that there is a social agreement between the employers, between the employees, and the government of Kenya in matters that are regarding labor and labor-related issues. This Industrial Relations Charter established a social relationship within these parties, and the Charter was geared towards creating a social framework in which the parties would ensure a good working environment. This Charter had a consensus, and the parties to the Charter agreed on a number of items to be able to safeguard this particular relationship. For example, they affirmed that there will be faith and there will be democracy in the relationship to ensure that all future differences between them are resolved in a most amicable way and voluntarily. They also ensured that the industrial action, there will be an opportunity for industrial action wherever the parties are not agreeable to or aggrieved in the relationship. Also, this ensured that to promote maximum cooperation, all the parties would agree and abide to the agreements that are mutually entered into by the parties. Number 4, they also agreed that they would observe the grievance resolution mechanisms or procedures that are agreed again between all these parties in resolving the disputes. These parties also to ensure that their members have the capacity to do what is expected, also agreed that they will ensure that they educate their members on matters that are of obligation between the parties and that are likely to create good industrial relationship. The parties also agreed to establish a joint consultative council to be able to safeguard or to settle matters or disputes that arise between them. In addition, again, we say that they also agreed to have respect for each one of them and to observe freedom of their members in terms of joining unions or association. They also agreed that where disputes arise, they will ensure that the disputes are dealt with promptly to ensure that there is peace and harmony in their relationship. The parties also agreed to engage in activities that will the parties also agreed that they will not engage in activities that will be contrary to the spirit of the Industrial Relations Charter. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you for participating in our session today and hope that this will make us better employers and better employees. Employment relationships are very important, and safeguarding this employment relationship through better employee relation practices is key for the success of the organization. In our next session, we will be looking at trade union and trade unionism in Kenya, and we'll be looking at their formation and how important they are for our organizations. Thank you.